Have you ever wondered how to make sense out of your messy life or how to live in peace in the middle of a stressful world? My name is Jamie Norton, and I want to welcome you to the Making Peace and Beyond podcast, where we talk about life struggles and how to live in the peace, joy, and freedom that Christ died to give us. Today, I'm really excited to have our guest, Heather Palisen. Heather and I have a couple of things in common. One is we're both counselors, and we've been counselors for a long time. And the other is we're both in recovery. And so today we want to just really talk about more about the program of recovery and what that looks like. So Heather, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. Again, my name is Heather Palisen. I am a counselor. I've worked in the field of addiction and mental health for the last 20 years, and I'm grateful to say I've been sober for the last 20 years, and I've had the privilege of being a part of different recovery groups throughout those 20 years. First met Jamie in 2003. She was the first person to invite me to a recovery group and to really show me what recovery is about and how to use recovery to overcome something that really had quite a grip on my life. So it's a pleasure to be here. And of course, it's thinking about 20 years ago, meeting Jamie for the first time, I would never have dreamed sitting here today talking like this on camera. First time for me, camera. So I'm adjusting to that. But yeah, what an amazing journey the last 20 years have been for me. So it's a little bit full circle sitting here talking with you. And I'm very grateful that you asked me and for all the things I've learned about recovery from you.
You know, it's been fun sharing that walk with you. And actually, we do share walking now.
We do.
Walk together every morning
literally.
that it's not slick and snowy out there. But I think what I had hoped to do today and do hope to do today is to really unpack what recovery is, because it's such a little known process in many ways, although there are hundreds and thousands of people who are in recovery. It's like almost a subculture of people. But I remember when I first came into recovery, my own recovery 44 years ago, I had no idea. First of all, I had no idea what was wrong with me. I grew up in an alcoholic family. Both of my parents died of alcoholism. And I was lost in my own addiction and actually married to a psychiatrist at the time and working in mental health. So it was very enlightening to know that there was a way back, because I was so lost, I had no idea there was a way back. And I think the recovery program offers not just a little bit of healing with a glass ceiling, it offers a full restoration process. And it brought me back to Jesus and back to Christ-centered recovery. But I thought it would be a good idea to unpack that process and really look at the 12 steps. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which began the recovery movement, was created in 1935 and was pretty much hidden in dark rooms. I remember when I got into recovery, the first meeting that I went to was up these dark stairs in this dark room with this room full of men. There were no women. Very few women came into recovery at that time because there was such a stigma and there was such a shame base of being a person who had addiction issues. And I remember thinking, if this is what it takes to recovery, I'm not sure I want to do it. But over the years have really learned to appreciate the 12-step and the whole process that's created, because now what we're finding out in mental health circles and in church circles, that process is essential for full healing. And so I wanted to just run over the steps, and I thought maybe if you wanted to take one and I'll take one, and we'll share that breaking it down business. So
Absolutely.
Would you like to start with step one?
Sure. So step one says we admitted we were powerless over, you can fill in the blank, alcohol, drugs, whatever the addiction. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. So
go ahead and say a little more about that.
So I I can speak from my own experience and meeting many people over the years. I've heard a lot of comments on step one, the two main concepts being powerlessness and unmanageability. And I know for myself, what I can say is I felt very powerless when I was in my addiction. I had started going to church about a year and a half before I got sober, and that completely changed my life. I gave my life to Christ, and I really was trying to live a new kind of life. But the addiction had really a grip on me, and I don't think I understood what I understand now, with just how serious addiction can be, and I didn't realize what I needed to get well. And that's that powerless feeling of I actually don't want to be doing what I'm doing, but I'm still doing it. I could just remember weekends of saying, I'm not going to do that this weekend. And I was very committed, and I would pray, and I'd be reading my Bible and doing all these right things. And yet I would find myself by the end of the weekend drinking and trying to go to church and repenting. And it was just this vicious cycle. So powerless for me reminds me of that time of being in this position of wanting very much to get rid of something in my life and feeling like I didn't have the power to do it. And my life was definitely unmanageable, because anybody who's experienced addiction, whether it's yours or someone around you, sees the effect of what happens from addiction. It takes away our ability to manage our emotions, to manage our relationships, to be able to function day to day. So looking at step one, I think I felt those things before I got into recovery. I felt the powerlessness and the unmanageability of my life. It was that I did not know what to do about it. And so step one is thankfully not the only step, but it's a necessary step, because if I hadn't really recognized those things in my life, I would probably not have been desperate enough to go do what I needed to do to get well. I
always heard that discovery is the first step in recovery, and it really is. And what we know is that when you try to control what you cannot control, it begins to control you, and it becomes a preoccupation, and it becomes an increasing sense of helplessness. And interestingly enough, scripturally, it's described perfectly in Romans chapter 7. I do what I don't want to do. I don't do what I should, and there's no hope for me. Which brings us to step two, which is I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And I think in that step, we have to admit that we're not sane. We have to admit that we are out of control. And there is a shame to that makes it very hard to share it. So we have become increasingly isolated and self-centered in that process. But somebody said first we come and then we come to, and I think that is true, to realize I can't, and the only hope I have is to seek something that can help me. And I think the sentence, I need help, is probably the most difficult sentence in the English language, or in any language, because we don't want to admit our vulnerability. We don't want to admit how helpless we really are. I think sometimes about the cross, and I think Jesus showed us total vulnerability on the cross. I mean, and he was beaten and naked and fully displayed. And that sense of vulnerability, I think, is saying, complete vulnerability is necessary for resurrection. We have to allow ourselves to share our vulnerability and to realize we're not perfect, we're not okay. And we don't even know why we're not okay, but we're not okay. And so step two is just really believing I have to reach out. I don't have any choice.
Absolutely.
Which goes into step three.
Step three, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. In AA, it says, as we understood him. Yes. And I was just thinking as you were talking, all throughout the steps is this idea of we. we admitted, we came to believe that we can recognize what's going on sometimes, but when we get around other people and who have the same struggle, I think that was the eye opener for me, was meeting somebody else in recovery. And that helped me with these first few steps, is really cementing that. And so coming to see the problem, coming to see that God can restore me to sanity, and then making a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. That's an interesting step, because it's sometimes is confusing, because I remember coming to church and making a decision to turn my life over to God. And I got baptized. I invited a bunch of my drinking friends to my baptism, which was really interesting. And my family, some of my family who had been praying for me for years, came to this baptism and were just praising God that, these things were happening. And so I did that in a sense of asking Christ into my life. And then in recovery, it went a little deeper, where I started to make a decision to turn over things to God that had been in my life for a long time, that I started to see were getting in the way of me being able to be who He wanted me to be. And I think that that's a big part of it. Is it's an ongoing process. We're always in a position of seeing things that get in the way and turning them over and being willing to surrender them. And that's why the steps are always being worked on, because you don't ever complete these things.
No.
Yeah.
We're never fully restored until He beams us up.
Yeah.
I say step 3 is like, you get a car to go to California, but you're not in California
Yeah.
yet. I think step 3 that is a decision. I can make a decision to go to California, but it doesn't get me there. I have to do something different. I have to turn things over.
Yeah.
And so step 3 gives us the willingness to go to step 4, which is in so many ways the step that I think it's 2 places that I think that Christ-centered recovery is better than AA recovery or church alone, because what happens in church very often is we go 1, 2, 3, 12. We go 1, 2, 3. I did make a decision. I realized I needed Christ. I turned my decision over, and then we jump to 12. I'm going to tell everybody else. And what that ends up being is that we're not really healed. We become more legalistic and often use the Bible as a weapon to talk to others, because we literally switch from one addiction to another. We switch from whatever it was we were doing before to religion, and we never really heal. And what the problem in the 12 steps is if step 3 is the God of my understanding, then we have no outside source of forgiveness. And one of the things that we have to have in order to fully recover is an outside source of forgiveness. And so putting Jesus as God of the 3rd step really completes the process of discipleship and healing when you work the steps. And so step 4 is the step that everybody sort of fears, and it's like you better be careful, because step 4 says I did a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. In other words, I look at myself fully in the mirror. I write down all of the things that I've done to hurt myself and others. And that's a scary thing, because as we do that, then we really discover, we are really messy, and I think of it sometimes as I lived in a dark room, and I couldn't see what was messy in there. I couldn't see the mess and the junk. And then when I invite Christ into my life, it's a light. It's the light of love. And He enters that room, but as His light enters that room, it's just really messy in there. And I see that mess for the first time. I really get out of my denial. I stop living the lie that I've been living, and I begin to really see how sick I truly am. And sometimes it feels easier to just turn the light back out and not go there, because it's a lot of work. It's a change of lifestyle, but I have to clean the room up first. and really looking at that. And so step 4 is about getting honest. Somebody said a synonym for addiction is lie. So it's and the other one is more now. but we live in a self-justified rationalization, blaming others, not really being aware of ourselves, and certainly not wanting to stop doing what we're doing because the belief has been, that it's helping us somehow, that it's giving us relief, and actually it's causing the problem. And, the Chinese had a saying once that first the man takes a drink, and then the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes the man. And you don't know when that process is happening, and so when we get to step 4, we're looking at, oh my goodness, look at the road I have walked down, and look at the damage I've left along the way. So step 4 is that inventory, and then we get to step 5.
Step 5 is that we share the exact nature of our wrongs with ourselves, another person, and God. And so we become ready to take the work we did in step 4, where we took the time to really look at what's underneath my addiction, what's all these other things I've never dealt with, how have I hurt other people, how have I hurt myself. We take all of those and we share them with somebody else. And step 5 is becoming, ready to do that, and to, like you use the word light a lot, and I think that's what it's kind of expose what's there, share that, open that up. They talk a lot about addiction being one of those things that produces a lot of shame in people, and anyone who's ever struggled with addiction knows what that's like, feeling ashamed of what has happened. And I think that the cure for shame is exposing it, and so step 5 is about exposing things that we've never really shared with someone else before.
It really, it took me a while to realize that we really need to share it with another human being. A lot of times people will say, well, God, I'm working that out. Well, God gives us the body of Christ to work out things with, and to be truthful with. But shame isolates us so much. And when we confess to another person the exact nature of our wrongs, then look into the eyes of acceptance, that is a reconnecting. That's a rebonding. Like, maybe there is hope for me. Maybe I can have relationships. I'm looking at you, and you're giving me your phone number, and I just told you my worst stuff, and you're inviting me back. You're not running out of the room screaming like I thought you would. And so it leads you to really feeling like maybe there is a way back. And in step 6, I become willing to let go of some of those things. And that's when I first got into recovery, I thought, well, I don't even see a purpose for step 6. Of course I'm willing to let go of them. I've been struggling with them forever. But I had a client come in one time, and he said, he was just very, very anxious, and he said, I don't exist. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm doing step 6, and if I give up my character defects, I won't exist. And I think sometimes that is, it's like, am I really ready to give up my greed, my pride, my slothness, my lying, all of the things that I've thought were helping me to get by, or things that I thought I was enjoying? Am I really ready to give those up? And I think step 6 brings to that question to the forefront, and to step 7, where we
humbly ask God to remove these shortcomings from our life. Humility is probably the key word, is really recognizing that, not that I'm less than what I am, but the truth about who I am, or what I've become, or what's happened. And so with humility, we go to God and ask Him. We know He is the only one who can remove these things, that we can see them, we can acknowledge them, but we don't have the power on our own to get rid of them. And
we really know that, He will give us what we need. I mean, He does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. That's one of the phrases this in the promises of recovery that I really love. God does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. He's the Savior. We're not. He's the one who transforms us. And so, he can do for us and restore us to sanity. He can restore us to humanity. And then we get to, okay, that takes care of me and God. Now I got to talk about relationships. So then I go and I make a list of all the persons I have harmed and become willing to make amends to them, which is really scary because in addiction we have this no talk rule. And so we don't talk about our addiction. And when anybody else tries to talk about it, we get mad or we leave or we do whatever. But certainly we're not going to own our behavior and ask forgiveness. That's a foreign concept. And so we make a list of all those people. And that's almost always a shocking list because we don't really realize how we have hurt people. How we have betrayed people, abandoned people, lied to people, manipulated and conned. You can't even be a good addict if you don't know how to con people. And so there's just, you got to do the most crazy things to people and get them to still be there. So we're really good at that. So going back and owning those things is something that is a part of reconnecting in relationships and helping relationships heal. And it has to be not, I'm going to ask you to forgive me and then I'm going to explain, what I did. You don't get any whys. You don't get any, anything that says, I'm going to just massage this a little bit and make it less than me hurting you. And the worst thing you can do is say, please, please forgive me for doing this, but you, but you made me do it, which is our addict way of thinking, But just to make a list of the people that we've harmed, and then we become willing to make amends to them all. In step 9.
Yep. So it's in step 9, we move on to making direct amends, unless to do so would be harmful to someone else. And so there's a lot of different situations that people have to work through as far as making amends. This is where the community is very helpful too, having people to talk things through with. Because like you said, what we don't want to do is reharm someone by going to them and making amends in a way that actually makes it worse. And so I know for me, when I actually got to this place, which was quite a process, it didn't happen. It happened over time. I talking to people about how to directly go to someone. How do I own my own part and not get into all these other things? Is there any situations where it wouldn't make sense for me to directly go to somebody because that would make things worse than what they already are? So it's an opportunity to clean up what my behavior has done. Looking back, I don't know if I've always done that well. Working the steps has been something that's kind of brings it to the forefront of the mind of when you hurt someone, the right thing to do is to go to them, to not ignore it or to ignore them or pretend it didn't happen. So it's an opportunity to take responsibility and to go to someone and to really own my part of what I did.
Doesn't mean they're going to forgive you.
Yeah.
It just means you're going to give that option. And then we go to step 10, which is the maintenance steps. Now we're good with ourselves, we're good with God, we're good with others, and then we have to learn to maintain that walk, which is hard. And because we're going to start feeling better. We're going to start, and then we're going to go back and believe, well, maybe it wasn't as unmanageable as I thought, or maybe it is manageable now. So if we don't go to step 10, then we tend to start to slide, which is doing a daily inventory of ourselves, and to when we're wrong, promptly admit it. So we're keeping up to date. We're keeping the house clean. We're doing our daily chores, and we're doing devotions, and we're doing readings, and we're going to meetings, and we're talking. I want to talk a little bit about the surrounding things of the steps and why they're so important. But we're doing those things that we need to do to keep our life on track. And And those are so very important. Not just to stop. Okay, now I'm recovered, but it's like I have to maintain by a routine of living, and it's a good routine. I know when I first got into recovery, I was like, why me? And I mean, and I hear people say I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic, and I would say, what is wrong with you? What are you talking about? And then I came to realize that I had grown up in some really chaotic situations, and to have the opportunity to get out of those situations. And if I had not gotten to the point where I had to surrender and I had to seek help, I probably wouldn't have circled that darkness for a long time, if not forever, which a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people have a black hole inside they're afraid they're going to fall into, and but you know, the the 10th step allows me to live the program, and that's what we're doing. We're not doing it separate from our lives. We're incorporating our recovery into everyday life. And step 11.
This is a big one. I'll paraphrase. So, step 11 is seeking out God's will in our life every day, improving our conscious contact with God, and really like developing and growing spiritually each day, making that a priority every day to grow more and more into God's will for us. And so, it's continuing to take care of that spiritual, that relationship with God, that's the priority. And seeking only His will, which is almost impossible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's really getting good at coming back to like the number one priority of all of this power comes from God. And it's all about how He wants to work into our lives and really seeking that out each day.
It's walking prayerfully and really realizing that, praying for His will for us and the strength to carry that out. But I do believe that God does not send us where He does not equip us to go. That He gives us manna for every moment. And even if we can't see what that journey is going to look like, we just have to show up. I mean, so much of recovery is about showing up. So much of life is about showing up. I mean, showing up and trusting, showing up and trusting, trusting and showing up. And step 12 is so important because the assignment, both scripturally and in 12 steps, is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, that we carry the message to those who are still suffering. And so it's about reaching out. It's about going out and, as we call it, making disciples, helping people to know. I didn't know there was a way back. And when I really understood recovery and the power of what was wrong with me to kill me, I wanted to help other people find out there is a way back. I don't care where you've been or what you've done or what's been done to you. There's a way back. And, in recovery circles, we say you can't keep it unless you give it away. I mean, it's the helping other people. Somebody described it once as we're all in a river drowning, and some of us get out to the bank and we want to reach in there and pull others out. We want to help others find a way. And the beautiful thing, having been in recovery as long as I have, is you. I mean, I met you in a different place and watched you grow and watched you get to step 12 and watched you give it away. And it's like it just strengthens and it just gives you a warm feeling of we're in something together. We're in something that we can pass on, and that is just so incredible. So to me, if we get down to what the steps are about, they are so powerful, but every single one of them is necessary for full restoration. And that is the gift of recovery that is there. The other thing I wanted to mention is the things surrounding recovery. I mean, some of the knowledge about what we need. We always say you can't do it alone. You have to stay in community, and not just a community where you're going to go talk about intellectual things or talk about how about those Browns. I mean, when that's not going to cut it. You have to have people around you where you can just be you, where you can not be okay on days, where you can be scared, where you can be angry, where you can be grieving, where you don't go out smiling sweetly, fine, thank you, where you can just put it down and have a safe place. And that's the other beauty of recovery is we know you were broken to get in that room. We know that you know what life is about. And so we're just grateful. I don't know, you were mentioning earlier your journey in groups.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was praying a little bit this morning, getting ready to come here and talk about it. And I felt God say, just share what recovery has meant to you. And I was thinking about how, when you're in, I got started early in addiction. And so there was a lot of things I never learned how to do. And it's embarrassing, but they're very basic things. Talk to people, manage emotions, be in a relationship with someone in a healthy way. Even just daily routines. I remember when I first quit drinking, I would come home from work and I'm like, what do people do when they get home from work if they don't drink? Like literally, I had no idea how to have a balanced routine day. And so I think about recovery groups and how much you learn there just by being there. It's not just the steps, and it's all these other things on the peripheral too, that you watch how people live their life and you start to pick up things that I learned how to be in a relationship with someone. I learned how to say no, I don't like that, or I don't want to do that. I learned how to accept it when someone says that to me. There's so many different things over the years I thought about that. I thought, wow, all of those little lessons just by interacting with people. You have people like Jamie model things and you're like, I really like how she did that. Next time I'm going to do it like that too. That worked well. You just learn so much just by being there, and it's, all of a sudden you're living life, and you learn how to live life without your addiction, and you learn how to do it with God, and you have all these other people doing the same thing, and I don't think I could ever say all the different pieces, how they come together. It's really amazing. Yeah.
That is such an important point in terms of not, if you grow up in especially in an addiction family, you don't learn how to live. You don't learn, families are responsible for socializing children. And when all of the attention is going to trying to manage the unmanageable and keeping a peace that does not exist, then you don't learn those basic life skills. And so then you're left sort of hung out to dry when you get sober. And so just being with a group of people who's stumbling along, trying to learn how, but then you see people who are a little bit ahead of you, and that's where hope is. You see that it works. You see that people do heal and people do get a life back. And we used to say recovery is like a country record played backwards. You get your life back. You get things back. And I think the other part of teaching is that you're expected to get a sponsor. A sponsor is someone who helps you learn to walk the program, that helps you learn to grow, to keep you accountable. And it's not that anyone can really keep us accountable. I mean, I can lie to somebody who's my sponsor just as easy as I can lie to somebody who's not. But what happens is when I'm in a safe place with a safe person where I know I don't have to lie, number one, they will point it out that I may be lying at some level, but also that when there's no reason to lie, we know when we lie. And so when you're with somebody that you know is there for you and you're lying to them, then you can see the lie begin again. I remember being in a group really early on, and it was a very safe group. We loved each other. We were committed to each other. And I said I had 2 cookies. And I really had the whole box. And I noticed it, and I thought, why did I say that? I could have said I ate a box of cookies, but it's not just in your addiction, it's in all areas of your life that we tend to embellish or minimize or distort truth. And when we start to do that, it begins to endanger our recovery, because recovery depends on us lying to ourselves. It depends on us not doing that. So staying in community, and then we've got Scripture. AA has its sayings like one day at a time, keep it simple, stupid. But Scripture is so filled with, peace be still and know that I am God. We have so many things that we can pull out to change our thinking, to help us to quiet our mind, because one of the really big things is we have noisy minds. We're always thinking too much, and to quiet our minds. And so the beauty of the wholeness of a true recovery program is I think true church. I mean, it is true church, and it's a place where we are learning to love, we're learning to walk together, we're learning to do the things that make life work, and we're learning that we're not perfect, and we're never going to finish those steps, but we can go back to one of the steps every time life begins to be a struggle. There's something that we're doing that is not, or not doing, that we should be, that can prevent us from getting to that edge. And so it's really beautiful. Anything else you might want to say about recovery itself?
What you said about Scripture, I think I've met people in church who aren't in recovery, and it can be like a baffling thing to explain to somebody. Like, why do you need to do that? Why can't you just go to church and read the Bible? And I don't know that there's one path everyone has to take, but I know for myself, it's not about it being different than church. It's just about we're all there with the same struggle, and we're using this pathway to be a part of the church. In that Scripture, to me, that's the beauty of like the Christ-centered program, is we are all praying to the same God, worshiping the same God, acknowledging the same God, and we have the Bible that is our guide. And so it's that foundational piece, I think, is the big difference, because at the end of the day, that is what we're all going back to. And that is different. That's different than everyone having their own idea. And so there's a piece of it there, that there's a spiritual piece there. God is moving in a way that is not something that any of us are doing. We just get to be a part of it. And so that part of it too, I think, is worth mentioning, that being a part of that is really plugging into the church. But just through this one avenue. And that's been amazing. I've seen the most amazing things, and very grateful for it. The friendships and the bonds formed in that shared experience are
it becomes a
incredible.
True body of Christ. It really is. I mean, it's just an amazing way of life. And I think that for anybody, it's an amazing way of life.
Yeah.
It never, it works. And well, I am so glad that you were here. This was fun, and I'm glad that it's just very heartwarming for me to just. I feel like a parent sometimes, just to watch people grow, and you've been great, and just really thank you.
Thank you. I could go on and on about that. Thank you. You have been an amazing mentor and friend to me, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for Making Peace and Beyond podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, we just would encourage you to subscribe, to write a review, give us support, share it with your friends, and join us on all of our other social media. We are everywhere. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and we just love being with you. And our prayer is that you would continue to grow in your own faith. And God bless you.